If you've accepted an offer that says subject to sale of a buyer's home, you're probably feeling one of two things. Either it's great, we're sold, or wait, are we stuck? Are we basically off the market now? Well, here's the truth. A subject to sale clause can be a smart tool that protects both sides, or it can quietly waste weeks of your life and kill your momentum. But it only works well if you understand who has control and when. Today, I'm going to break down everything you need to know from the seller side and the buyer side. I'll give you exact filter I use with my own clients to decide whether the subject to sale offer is strong or if it's a red flag. Because knowledge is your superpower, and at the Trillion Real Estate Group, we are fiercely local. By the end of this video, you'll know what a subject to sale actually means in plain English, how the mechanism works, including the bump and the seller's notice, what sellers should look for, and how to protect themselves, what buyers should look for, and how to find opportunity when other buyers get discouraged. All right, here's the big mistake people make. They judge the clause without judging the house that has to sell. Okay? Subject to sale, simple version. It means the buyer is saying, I want your home, but I need to sell my home to sell. I need my home to sell first. That's it. That's it. So your sale becomes a domino. Their home has to sell so they can buy yours. Now here's what it does not mean. It does not mean your home is basically sold. It does not mean you stop marketing, and it does not mean you lose control. So let's walk through the mechanism quickly, and then we'll do seller strategy and buyer strategy. Here's the process in human language. Step 1, you accept an offer that's subject to sale. Got it. Step 2, your home continues to be marketed and shown. Step 3, the buyer works to sell their home by a deadline. Now, here's the important part. If an offer comes in, the seller can accept that second offer. If they do, then we will deliver what's called a seller's notice to the first buyer. That notice gives them a set amount of time, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever was negotiated in the deal. Okay? And in that time window, the buyer has to remove all conditions, not just the subject to sale. All of them, financing, inspection, condo docs, whatever conditions were in the deal. If they remove all conditions in time, the deal continues and goes firm. If they can't, the first contract ends and the seller moves forward with the new offer. That's the machine. Now, let's talk about the seller. When I'm representing a seller, an offer comes in subject to sale, I'm asking the question, does this put my seller ahead or behind? Does it help or hinder? Because subject to sale isn't automatically good or bad. It depends on the home that has to sell. So here's my filter. I look at the buyer's home through 3 lenses: price, condition, location. First, price. Is it priced to sell or is it priced to hope? Because overpriced homes don't sell, they'll sit. Second, condition. Is it clean? Is it staged? Is it ready to go? Or is this a project that shrinks the buyer pool? Third, location. Is it a liquid segment, like a well-priced townhome in Red Deer, clean, in a good neighborhood? Or is it a slow segment, like an overpriced, maybe rural home that doesn't see many sales? That's how I decide if we're ahead or if we're behind. Here's the key nuance. Out of those 3, price, condition, and location, only one has a lever we can actually pull. Condition is mostly fixed. Location, it is fixed. We ain't moving the house. Price is the lever. And I've had it before where we'll say yes to a subject to sale, but only if the buyer lowers the asking price of the home that needs to sell. Because if that home is overpriced, the risk isn't the clause, it's the pricing strategy. So sometimes we protect the seller by making sure the domino is set up to actually fall. Now, sellers also need to watch two timelines. The first timeline is how soon until the buyer's home is listed. If it's not already listed and the plan is, wow, sometime next week, I get reservations. Personally, anything more than 48 hours to list, I'm going to pay close attention to that. Okay, second thing, the bump window. If we do accept a second offer and serve the seller's notice to the first buyer, how many hours does the buyer get to remove all conditions? Most of the time, I recommend 48 hours for my sellers. It's time enough. The reason is that's time enough for a serious buyer to act, but not so much time that we lose a strong second offer. Now, seller advantages. There's three. Number one, you can accept an offer without turning off the lights. We keep marketing, we keep showing aggressively. Two, if a second offer comes in, you can accept it and use the seller's notice to force a decision with the first buyer. Three, sometimes subject to sales can justify a stronger price. Let me explain. Because the buyer loses a bit of leverage when their offer isn't as clean as, say, cash or just financing, or because they have a house to sell. In some cases, we can negotiate a little harder on price because the seller is talking on uncertainty. Now, here's the seller risk, quick and real. If you stop marketing, you lose your protection, which is the second offer. So don't go passive. If the buyer's home is unrealistic, you could just sit in limbo. And if time drags on, you lose momentum and that fresh listing window. That's why we evaluate the home and we protect those timelines. All right, let's flip over to the buyer side because this is where people get emotional. Buyers have been frustrated with low inventory recently. So when they finally find the one, they get excited. Remember, people buy emotionally and justify logically. People don't like it when their emotion gets messed with. When they hear subject to sale, they often get discouraged. And some buyers even decide, I'm not even going to look at those homes. And I don't really love that advice, but I get it. Emotional, right? Because you don't actually know if the subject to sale is any good. Or if it's shaky, if it's rock solid, you don't know. Sometimes the subject to sale is exactly where the opportunity is. But you got to ask questions. I'm going to give you a real life example. This just happened last month. I recently had a buyer who fell in love with a property, of course, and we talked about it. When I pulled it up, I realized it had a subject to sale on it. Immediately, my client was discouraged and confused because he didn't understand. And when people are confused and understand, a lot of times they just want to walk away. But instead of guessing, I phoned the listing agent and I asked the right questions, and what I found out was huge. The listing agent was not confident at all that the subject to sale offer was going to complete on time, if at all. So she encouraged us to show it and bring an offer. Well, guess what? We did. And after 48 hours, after we invoked the seller's notice to the first buyer, the property was his. Amazing. That's the lesson. Subject to sale isn't a stop sign. It's a signal to ask better questions. So let's talk buyer strategy. As a buyer, you want to find out how strong is the existing subject to sale deal. And you can't always see everything, but you can ask smart questions. For example, is the buyer's home already listed? If yes, what's the price point? What's the condition? Where is it? Listen to the answers. Notice what we're doing here. We're using the same three lenses: price, condition, and location. Because remember, the entire deal depends on whether or not that home sells. You also want to know if the seller accepts another offer, what's the bump window? Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? Is it 72 hours? What is it? Because that tells you how likely the first buyer can actually firm up under pressure. The shorter, the better, if you're that buyer. Now, here's the pros to the buyer. Number one, sometimes these listings have less competition because some buyers avoid them. It's true. What we see is if a deal goes conditional with the clause, a time clause, viewings go down. They shouldn't, but they do. Secondly, sometimes the seller is open to a better offer, especially if the first deal's shaky. Thirdly, if you can move fast and write strong, you can position yourself as the clean backup or even the replacement. Okay, here's some of the risks. The seller may be more rigid on price because they already have one in their hip pocket. If the first buyer brought a strong money, the seller might say, I'm not lowering, I'm going to stay with the first offer, I'm not in a hurry, whatever. The second risk, you can spend time and money and still lose it if the timeline collapses. Risk 3, the domino effect. If their deal depends on another deal and another deal and another deal, chains break. Like I said, the most I've ever seen is 6 or 7. The middle deal breaks, it all breaks. Lastly, the fourth risk is uncertainty. Until it's firm, you don't know truly when or if it's yours. Now, 2 quick examples to make this practical. Example 1, a subject to sale home has a clean, well-priced townhome in Red Deer in a great neighborhood. That's a liquid property, high odds that it's going to sell. Let's look at another example. Maybe it's a subject to sale home is an overpriced rural property in a low volume area. Okay, that's slower, certainly more uncertainty. So again, subject to sale isn't automatically good, and it's not automatically bad. It depends on the property that has to sell and the timelines controlling that pressure. Let's wrap up with a simple checklist. If you're a seller, remember the 3+2 rule. Buyer's home, price, condition, location. Your controls, list timeline, ideally within 48 hours, and a bump window, typically 48 hours. If you're a buyer, don't self-eliminate. Investigate the strength of the existing deal. Ask better questions. And remember, the seller may have leverage if they've got a strong offer in their pocket. All right, so there you go. You know what a subject to sale clause is now, how the mechanism works, and how to think about it from both sides, buyer and seller. Sellers, remember, you're not stuck. You have control if you evaluate the subject property and protect timelines. Buyers, don't panic. Don't self-eliminate. You can find opportunity here, especially if you stay logical and ask smart questions. If you want, we have a 1-page subject to sale survival guide that we use with our clients. It includes the seller's checklist, the buyer's checklist, and the exact questions to ask when the clause shows up. All you have to do is comment guide and we'll get it out to you. And if you're a buyer or selling in Central Alberta, remember, we're fiercely local. Until then, stay knowledgeable, folks. Knowledge is your superpower.